Clause 19.
One member for Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment to move in my name. Clause 19, page 14, after paragraph C, insert the following paragraph. D, by inserting the following subsection after subsection 2A, if a period of emergency restriction has been declared under this section for 90 days or more within a 120-day period, a resolution of both Houses of Parliament is required that authorises A, any extension of that period of emergency restriction under this section, or B, any further period of emergency restriction that is to be declared in the 120 days immediately following that 120-day period. So to speak to that amendment, Madam Chair, the Petroleum Products Emergency Act, Section 5, that we're looking at here, is about the Governor, and that would be on the advice from the Executive, the Governor declaring by proclamation a period of either restriction or rationing. That's what Section 5 is doing. And there's rules here about how long that can last for, and when extensions are made, how long they can last for. And the thing that I'm interested in about this is that through the bill we're looking at today, we're extending the timeframes that are in this bill, that periods of restriction and rationing can be applied or can be declared. So we're already extending that out. And one of the key things that the section in the Principal Act does at the moment is it recognises a principle we would all be familiar with, which is that sort of executive government decision, I know it's the Governor declaring it, but on advice of executive government, that executive government decisions like that should have parliamentary oversight at some point. And that's a fairly straightforward democratic principle. So that executive government's power isn't untrammelled. So it already has that built in. The way it is currently in the Principal Act is that it recognises under Section 5(2)(b) that basically if you've gone for a period of 28 days and you want to extend it further, then you have to come to Parliament to ask for, or get Parliament to agree to that further extension. And we've of course continued that, because in the bill we're extending the time periods, but we're still retaining that. It's just that now, because we're extending the time periods, it goes out to 60 days. So you can have a period of 60 days, basically, through potentially some extensions made, where a declaration has been made about restrictions and rationing. Now, 2 months is a pretty long time for the Tasmanian community to be under restriction and rationing provisions of some sort. And if we'd had 60 days and the government wanted by the Governor to extend it further, it would have to come to Parliament, and that's fine. That's good. That's still there in what we're doing today. My concern was that, well, 60 days is a really long time. What if we'd had that period of time and it had come to an end, and then after a very short duration, we'd entered into another period, another declaration of an emergency restriction and rationing period. And that could extend out to 60 days then under what we're doing today. So within a fairly short period of time, you could end up with a 2-month block and then quite soon another 2-month block of restriction and rationing that had never been brought to Parliament, was my concern. So what I wanted to do was insert into this some sort of provision, so not too much of that could go on without Parliament being able to have some oversight of the executive government decision-making behind that. So that's the intention of the amendment, to address some questions that I might be able to preempt. Why the 90 days? Why the 120 days? One of the things I would have been inclined to do, had I had more time to interact with this bill, to talk with the government about it, I would have been inclined to, in the first instance, probably have looked to shorten the 60 days that the government had here in their amendments. And because I think that's a really long time. 2 months is a really long time for a government to have the state under restrictions and rationing without coming to Parliament. But rather than interfere with any of the drafting of the government here and try to mess with these 28 days and 60 days that we're changing already, rather than try and change what the government was doing, I've come at it separately, and I think much more modestly, to at least put in something as a backstop to try to keep some strength around this principle. So the 90 days and the 120 days, I certainly don't have a well-researched rationale to give you for why those two particular amounts of time, other than to say I felt like if we'd been under 90 days restriction and rationing within a 120-day period, so there might have been a break or two in it, but total of 90 days within 120 days, the state would probably expect us as a parliament to provide some oversight of the executive government's decisions on that front. Would probably want, particularly key stakeholders or citizens or representative groups or whoever it might be, would expect us as a parliament to at least have the government have to explain to us as parliament why they're doing it, why they want it to go longer, and that would be a reasonable democratic principle. That's the gist of it. I can't give you a better reason for the 90 and 120 days. I would like to, if I'd had more time, find a good rationale. One of the things to be avoided, as it was explained to me with this sort of amendment, was not to be seen to or have it be constraining of the governor in the sense of the ability to make a declaration. This really sort of puts it ahead of the governor's decision on that point. The way it's drafted, it mimics some similar drafting in the Nature Conservation Act, as it turns out. We looked, I said, is there somewhere else we can look to find a similar sort of approach and mimic that? That's what we've done in the drafting process. So hopefully that's enough information about what the intention is, where I've come from in terms of the drafting under pretty tight circumstances tonight, trying to not disrupt what the government was intending to the greatest extent, stick with the principle I feel is very important in terms of parliamentary oversight of the executive decision-making, and have something that's relatively defensible even on a common sense basis even if I can't put something more definite to it as a rationale for those particular timeframes. So I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
The question is the amendment be agreed to. The Honourable Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The government recognises and acknowledges the amendment moved by the member. And I can say on behalf of the government from the outset that the government will not be opposing the amendment. In the government's view, the scenario that the member is concerned about is very unlikely to materialise, and they would have considered longer periods would be put to Parliament for approval under the existing section. Nonetheless, it is also recognised that the bill has been brought in on an urgency, as we all know, and therefore the government has no objection to ensuring parliamentary oversight regarding a long-term period of emergency declaration, and again won't be opposing the amendment.
The question is the amendment be agreed to. Those that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against no. I think the ayes have it. The question is the clause as amended stand part of the bill. Those that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Against no. I think the ayes have it.